Hello, I am Lee Unkrich. I'm the director of Toy Story 3.
And I am Darla K. Anderson, the producer.
And the K stands for?
K-A-Y.
I don't think I'm going to be able to remember that. Anyway, so we're here doing the commentary for Toy Story 3.
Oh, the first version, remember? It had all the exact original dialogue.
Yeah, and we left a lot of that. I thought it would be fun to harken back to the original opening of Toy Story when Andy's playing with the toys, talking about his force field dog and the dinosaur who eats force field dogs. Originally, we tried to stick to just that dialogue and tried to use all of it. But we found that a little restrictive, so we ended up letting this take on its own life, but we tried to touch base with those lines here and there.
That's for the geeks out there.
We love this pig ship. I wish we could see it more, but we had to get on with our movie. I'd love to make a whole short film just about Evil Dr. Porkchop and his spaceship here. Anyone who knows me knows that I love monkeys, and so, of course, we had to have Death by Monkeys here. And I believe when this bomb goes off, there are at least 1.4 million barrel of monkeys in that nuclear blast.
Yeah, there's some kind of monkey equation. There's some monkey math going on here.
I have to give credit to Brad Bird for that idea to actually have the mushroom cloud made out of monkeys. We originally just had a big blast go off, and then this kind of flood of monkeys came pouring across the plains, and it was Brad Bird's idea to actually have the mushroom cloud. So thank you, Brad. So this home video sequence here wasn't part of the film for a long time, but once we came up with it, we knew that it was right. We were a little freaked out at first because we weren't planning on building a model of young Andy, and we were already stretched so thin creating all the characters that are in this movie. It kind of freaked us out a bit, the idea of having to create another human especially.
And one that would work in our world.
Right. Well, we made a lot of technological and artistic advances in the 11 years since Toy Story 2, and one of the things that we were never really happy with in the earlier movies were the humans. We did the best job we could at the time, but there were just a lot of limitations in the technology. Now we can do humans pretty well, so the challenge on this movie was to make the humans look better, but not have them feel like they were from a completely different movie. I had this idea that if we shot everything on kind of cruddy VHS, that we wouldn't have to build the models and Andy up to the same level that we've had to do the other characters in the movie. We could kind of hide that by having the video be cruddy and get away with kind of a cheaper model. As it turns out, people here are really not capable of creating anything halfway. So Andy actually looks really great, I think. And even though we only see him kind of at VHS quality.
He looks fantastic. A few cool autobiographical things in there. We have a pendant for PU.
Pixar University. We put some Tigers stickers on Andy's toy box. My high school, I grew up in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, and it was the Chagrin Falls Tigers.
West Cutting Boulevard.
We have a tradition at Pixar of always hiding a character from our next film in the previous film. And somewhere in this room, you will see something from Cars 2. I guess I'll just leave it at that and see if you can find it.
It might be a car.
Okay, garbage bags. We got to talk about the garbage bags.
Yeah, garbage bags. That was
when I
smokes.
gathered the team on this movie, I enticed them with the promise that we did not need to invent any new technologies.
And when he says I, he means we.
We enticed them with the promise that they wouldn't have to develop any new technologies. Who knew that garbage bags would prove to be the most difficult thing that we had ever done at the studio and would bring Pixar to its knees?
Yeah, and early on we had some looks development tests on the simulation of this thin plastic that, look at all that detail and wrinkling and everything. And the early tests looked fantastic. And we thought, okay, great, well, check, problem solved. But it took a long time to continue to advance it and make it look just so perfect.
Well, so luckily, Michael Fong and his amazing team in Shots of technical director brainiacs were up for the challenge.
And Shots is kind of like our special effects department.
I think they actually now boycott garbage bags and don't use them in their personal lives anymore because they have like terrible post-traumatic stress disorder whenever they see a box of garbage bags. We have somebody making a little cameo here coming up. We had this garbage man on the back of the truck, and we thought, well, why not make this Sid? So we gave him the same old T-shirt, and I don't know if
the guy's never changed his shirt.
I don't know if it makes sense because Andy moves away at the end of Toy Story, but who knows how far away he moved? I guess he didn't move very far. We actually called Eric Von Detten, who was a young boy when we made Toy Story, and asked him if he'd be interested in coming back and doing a little cameo in Toy Story 3.
He was so happy to come back in and be a part of it. And Eric, he's still a successful actor, doing really great. And he said that doing Toy Story really shaped a lot of his childhood in the best way.
So since we were just talking about Eric Von Detten, it would probably be a good idea to talk about John Morris.
Yeah, that's right.
John Morris was the boy who played Andy in Toy Story and Toy Story 2.
That's right.
And when we decided we wanted to have Andy grown up in Toy Story 3 and started thinking about who would play him, I got this idea in my head that we should reach out and find out where John was. He was 14 years old, I think, when we made Toy Story 2, and we had no idea where he was or what he sounded like. And we managed to track him down, and I'll never forget the day that Kevin Rear,
Our casting guy
extraordinaire, called me into his when I heard his voice, that he was perfect, that even though he was kind of in his early 20s at this point, that he still sounded like he could pull off playing a 17-year-old.
Now we're arriving at Sunnyside Daycare, and right away, as soon as we walk in the door, we meet Bonnie, a little girl, and her mom. And the reason we had Bonnie's mom work at the daycare was for a very specific reason, which is that at the end of the movie, when Andy shows up at Bonnie's house to give her the toys, we didn't want Andy to be a complete stranger showing up at the house. We wanted to kind of establish this pre-existing friendship between the families. So we solved that problem by creating this implied family friendship and this situation where Andy and Molly had gone to Sunnyside Daycare when they were little, and Mom kind of knows Bonnie's mom. And by doing that, we solved the problem of Andy being a complete stranger showing up at Bonnie's house at the end of the movie.
So here comes Ken. Ken. That was one of the things we came up with at our 2-day offsite, is that we wanted Ken to be in this movie. And I went back through my notes and found that we actually brought up the idea of having Michael Keaton play Ken. We kicked around a couple of other ideas, but we kept coming back to Michael Keaton. John had worked with Michael Keaton on Cars. Michael played Chick Hicks and had a blast working with him, and we all thought he would be great as Ken. So we contacted Michael, and he was totally up for it and came in and just knocked it out of the park.
Michael comes in. He's such a good improvisational actor. He has so much enthusiasm and brought a lot of his own ideas to the character, and that's so important for animation. All that big energy sure shows up on the screen.
The other thing that makes Ken funny in my mind is his design. There have been a lot of different Kens over the years, but there was this one Ken from the kind of the late 80s called Animal Lovin' Ken. We recreated this exact Animal Lovin' Ken outfit from the late 80s. And it's the whole package. It's the molded hair. It's the shirt open all the way down to the belly button. It's the ascot. Every little bit of it. It just made me laugh, and I suspected it would make everybody else laugh, too.
And Barbie, too. Barbie's in her aerobics outfit.
That's actually a real aerobics outfit that Barbie is in. And I just thought it would be funny to have Barbie have to suffer the indignity of being stuck in the same out-of-date outfit for years and years and years. I mean, Barbie and Ken are all about the clothes, right? So Ken's able to indulge in all these different outfits, but poor Barbie, until the epilogue at least, gets stuck having to wear this same workout wear.
That's right.
For a long time, I felt bad, like, well, okay, there's no preschool that's really like this, because the teachers would have the kids under control. But I was actually at a weekend event at my kids' preschool with parents, and there were no teachers there. And something like that actually happened. The kids were just running around like crazy, and they were driving over toys with their tricycles out in the playground. And it was clearly like the warden was away from the prison, and the kids were just going bananas. So it was nice to see that there was some reality to the kind of the craziness of the scene that we were creating for the movie.
We cut back to the Caterpillar room, and of course, it's like the end of a battle. I always describe this to my team as I wanted it to feel like the very end of the day, sunset after a Civil War battle, with the blood red sun going down, and all the soldiers kind of littering the battlefield, groaning and tending to themselves.
And and Scarlett O'Hara making a dress out of the curtains.
When Buzz talks about the transom here, I have to say Michael Arndt, the screenwriter, begged me to put in a line for Rex saying, "What's a transom, Buzz?" Which I think was an homage to the movie Drugstore Cowboy. And I ended up not putting it in because I didn't think we needed it, and I didn't think anyone would get it. But he begged me repeatedly to put it in, and every time this scene goes by, that's all I think of is Michael begging me to put that line in. So, Michael, it's not in the movie, but at least it's in the commentary. When we first decided to show Lotso's backstory, we had a whole sequence where Lotso got left at a rest stop by Daisy and then ended up accidentally getting thrown away and going on this journey in a garbage truck to the dump, and almost went into the incinerator and then rescued himself at the last moment. And it wasn't really making a comment about Lotso's character. So we ended up instead coming up with this idea that Lotso would brave impossible odds to get back to Daisy's house, only to discover that he had been replaced. And, Woody could have been in that same situation. He could have gotten lost and come back and found a new Woody. And, we like to think that Lotso and Woody are very alike in a lot of ways. But at this moment, Lotso makes a bad choice. And he lies to Big Baby and chuckles and claims that Daisy replaced all of them. And he goes down the wrong path, and it's a dark path. And we had him do that specifically because at the end of the film, when Lotso decides not to help the guys and not push the button and stop the conveyor belt, there were a lot of people in early screenings who didn't like that. They thought that Lotso should redeem himself and should save them.
And he was too sympathetic. A lot of people really felt sorry for him.
Well, they felt sorry for him because, poor guy, he got replaced. But we addressed that note by having him tell more of a blatant lie at that moment and rip Big Baby's pendant off of him and act in a very selfish way.
Darn it, Barbie.
Parenthetically, I love the line, darn it, Barbie.
That's your favorite line in the movie, I think.
Kinda, it is, yeah.
This idea of Mr. Potato Head using his parts in a tortilla, that was an idea that we came up with near the very beginning of the film. I think Andrew Stanton actually came up with the tortilla specifically. When we had our original 2-day offsite, we had a 2-day offsite at the beginning of this film where John Lasseter and Pete Docter and Darla and me and Bob Peterson and Jeff Pigeon, a bunch of folks, we all got together and dreamed up the skeleton of this movie. And one of the ideas we kicked around then was that Mr. Potato Head could actually stick his parts in something other than his potato. But when Andrew Stanton went off and wrote the initial treatment that kicked off our story process, he came up with this idea that they would slip a tortilla under the door and Mr. Potato Head would put his parts in it.
I actually did 2 voices in Toy Story 3. One was the Jack in the Box that yells, "New toys!" And the other's the monkey here, when he's tied up with the tape and he's struggling, going, It's actually me.
Was it method acting?
No, I always secretly wanted to be a monkey, and my dream came true.
Just to give you a little glimpse into kind of the craziness of how detail-oriented we are, this rubber band string that Slinky pulls back to shoot the key across the hall, I can't even tell you how many meetings we had about that rubber band string and how to do it and what it should look like and how to hook the rubber bands together. And again, it's on screen for seconds. You just barely see it. But with their meetings, there are photographs of me kind of talking to the TDs about how to make the rubber band string. It's just on and on and on. It was just this huge project for just moments on screen. The Nehru jacket.
A Nehru jacket. It's highly valuable to Ken. It's from the Groovy Formal collection.
We did a lot of research into kind of what the most valuable outfit would be. And somehow Barbie would know that. She would know the most valuable thing to tear in half, or to threaten to tear, to get Ken to finally spill the beans about what they did to Buzz. But when we found out what the outfit actually was, it was really mundane. It was just like totally not an interesting thing. So we ended up just inventing the rare Nehru jacket. That was something we totally made up. Ken may have had a Nehru jacket at some point, but this one we totally made up and made it from the Groovy Formal collection of like 1967. Now we're heading towards Buzz getting switched into Spanish mode. This is an idea that we came up with at an offsite kind of early on the film. We knew that Buzz was going to get switched into demo mode, and I think we were having a conversation about how to get him switched back because we wanted it to be entertaining. We didn't want it to just be this mundane thing. And I believe Andrew just casually tossed out the idea of, what if Buzz accidentally got switched into Spanish mode? And as is often the case when a good idea hits the floor in one of these meetings, everybody jumped all over it. We thought, well, okay, not only does he speak Spanish, but he needs to act totally differently. He needs to become like this Latin lover and completely change his personality. I originally thought it would be great to have Tim Allen do the Spanish for Spanish Buzz.
And he wanted to.
And he really, really wanted to, but as we quickly learned, Tim speaks English. And that's all he speaks. And even though he gave it a good, solid effort, everybody knew, including Tim, that this was going to be funniest if Buzz was just suddenly speaking extremely fluent Spanish.
And not just Spanish, but Castilian Spanish.
Well, we did a lot of exploration of how Spanish Buzz was going to move. I did some work with Carlos Baena, one of my animators who's from Spain. And we watched a lot of flamenco dancing and Latin ballroom dancing and bullfighters. And all of that is very Spain, very kind of actually Andalusian Spain, kind of southern Spain. And so we finally committed to having the Spanish that Spanish Buzz speaks be kind of a Castilian Spanish from Spain rather than being, say, a Mexican Spanish.
So that it would match the physicality just right.
And we finally found this great actor named Javier Fernandez Peña, who interestingly enough, had done the Spanish voice for Buzz Lightyear toys in Spain. Totally randomly. I mean, we didn't even
Which
know
we
that
didn't
when
realize,
we picked his
yeah.
voice. We just wanted someone who was going to kind of have a deep, sexy Spanish voice. And so he got the job, which he loved being a part of this film. This beat back in the bushes where Spanish Buzz does his kind of courting dance around Jesse, that came because early on when we were trying to find the physicality for Spanish Buzz, I had Carlos Baena just do a bit of test animation.
Just to explore.
Just to explore the
Yeah.
physicality, and we just happened to have Jessie in it, and we had Buzz kind of, trying to enchant her in his Spanish way. And it was really, really funny. It was a big hit. Everybody loved it, and it laid the groundwork for all the Spanish Buzz animation to come. But we realized at a certain point that animation was really funny, but none of it was in the movie. Like, there was no beat like that in the movie. And it was John Lasseter who, in one of our meetings one day, said, you guys should really try to find a place to use that somehow, because it's just too good not to have in the movie.
And as is often the case, John was right.
John was totally right. The key was finding the place to put it, because I didn't want it to feel shoehorned in. And then I finally decided that if we were going to do it anywhere, it was going to be in this beat between getting across the playground and getting over to the opening to the dumpster. And I'm so glad it's in the movie, because it just gets huge laughs all the time, just like our animation test did. Although, to his credit, Carlos took what he did, which was already great in the animation test, and he made it like 50 times better. Then we give Big Baby this one last moment here.
The
Comeuppance moment. Big Baby only has one line in this whole movie. His vocalizations are all made up from lots of different real babies, but he has one line, which is where he says, and that for that one line, we auditioned a whole bunch of babies. We had all these babies come in and say mama, and they played all the mamas for me. I didn't know who any of the babies were or what their names were, but I ended up picking this one performance because it sounded the most kind of heartbroken and pathetic to me. And it was only after I picked it, and I said, well, what's the name of the baby? And they said, this baby's name is Woody.
And
it's pretty
first of all,
freaky deaky.
Very odd coincidence. Coincidence, I think not.
The idea of the toys showing up at the dump kept rattling around in my head. It just seemed like a great setting, and it felt like the true end game for a toy. A toy getting thrown away, that's not the end of its life. I mean, a toy being outgrown by a kid, that's not the end of its life. But ending up at a landfill and then ultimately heading towards the belching inferno of an incinerator, that's the end. That is the end. There's nothing beyond that. And that really resonated with me and stuck with me, and I couldn't let go of it. And I thought, if we're going to end this trilogy in a big way and really push the toys to the brink, I thought that we should take them to the dump. It's the biggest fear that the toys have. It's a fear that we show at the beginning of the movie when they almost get thrown away in the truck. That simple decision ended up translating into a mountain of work for a lot of people. But what it begat, which I'm most proud of in this film, is the scene in the incinerator. We knew we wanted Buzz to grab a lunchbox and have that lunchbox pull him up to the belt. And I ended up having it be my favorite lunchbox from my childhood, which was my $6 Million Man lunchbox. That's what Buzz has there. Try not to make it too obvious, but that's what that is. If we've done our job well as storytellers, I think that, I think people are fully expecting that Lasso's going to push this button. At least I hope that's what we want people to believe. We want people to believe that, against all odds, Lasso manages to get up to that button, and he's going to save these guys as thanks for saving him. He's doing the right thing.
I think it works because we want him to.
Yeah, we really wanted to. We're rooting for it. And, of course, when he gets up to the top, he doesn't push the button. And I hope that the audience feels at that moment, oh, my God, what can possibly happen now? How are they possibly going to get out of this situation? Yet a second later, they go tumbling back into the incinerator. I mean, we wanted this to just seem completely impossible. We designed this whole area here at the end, the vortex of trash, to be inescapable. The toys turn around and they try to scramble out. They try to climb up the trash, but it's very quickly clear that that's not an option for them. I mean, I wanted there to be no options.
Right, because our characters wouldn't give up. Our characters wouldn't give up if there were options.
No, but if you remove all those options and there's no choice, what happens in that moment? And we saw this as just being this wonderful, I mean, it's really heavy, but it's this wonderful moment of these toys kind of really coming together as a family and knowing that against all odds, that's what's most important. They have each other, and they're gonna face their end with a quiet dignity. So this idea of them getting rescued by the claw, We came up with that pretty early on, and it was, again, one of those ideas that we knew instantly that it was the right idea because, of course, it fed back into the first film with the claw where the aliens came from. It allowed the aliens to kind of repay their debt to Mr. Potato Head from Toy Story 2 where he saved their lives. So I think in their minds, all they're doing is repaying their debt to Mr. Potato Head. They're not doing anything particularly heroic in saving everybody. They're just paying Mr. Potato Head back. And these claws actually exist. They have these huge claws at dumps. We saw one, and it looks exactly like that.
True that. They're really that huge. Deus ex machina.
Well, this is literally, Deus ex machina is this Greek idea of like the hand of God coming down. And literally in Greek plays, there would be a mechanical thing that would come down out of the ceiling and would often kind of rescue characters. And it's seen as, it kind of connotes bad storytelling, that if you have characters in an impossible situation and then you have some kind of simple thing show up that saves the day that you didn't set up in any way, people call that Deus ex machina, and it's, again, this negative thing. But we thought, well, let's have it literally be, it is Deus ex machina. It's like a hand of God coming down from the heavens to save them, and we just fully embraced the idea. We established the claw a few times earlier in the film as jokes of the aliens seeing the claw, and we did that specifically to kind of keep that idea of the claw present in people's minds so that this wouldn't be coming out of nowhere at the end. This idea of Lotso ending up tied to the front of a garbage truck, everyone around the world might not be familiar with this, but in a lot of big urban areas, you'll often see garbage trucks with stuffed animals tied to the front, and you see them all over New York City. And they do that because, the garbage men will be emptying the garbage and they'll find a poor stuffed animal that's been thrown away. And rather than just throwing it away, they'll, give it a little dignity and tie it to the front of their truck. It's not to be mean to it. It's to save it from the garbage and have a little mascot on the front of their truck. So we thought that would be a fitting end to Lotso, to have him end up tied to the front of this truck. And we added a bunch of other characters there who've been there for some time and are deteriorating and covered with bugs, so we could get a sense of probably what's going to happen to Lotso after a few months.
Yeah, it was a good way to give him his comeuppance without being too overly mean.
I guess they pick up the garbage a lot in Andy's neighborhood.
That's why it's so clean.
It's like Singapore. They're very fastidious there. This end credit sequence sprang really out of the need to kind of wrap up some of the storylines that we weren't able to finish in the movie proper. When the toys all fall into the dumpster and leave Sunnyside, we leave Ken and Barbie kind of hanging. We never really see what happened back at Sunnyside. And that was really the biggest dangling storyline that we wanted to wrap up. So we came up with this idea of doing something kind of similar to what we did in Cars, where, rather than doing outtakes or a song or anything, that we would actually kind of extend the storytelling of the movie.
It's an epilogue, really.
Yeah, it's kind of an epilogue happening during the end credits, and it allowed us to kind of have all these beats where we see that Sunnyside's this good place now, and everyone's playing fairly. And
it's not just good; it's cool and groovy.
It is cool and groovy. And, we were able to have a little fun here and get Ken into one last groovy outfit. Actually, two, because he tears this off and reveals the gold tuxedo. I actually animated one character in the shot. It's the only animation I've ever done in my life. When Ken first shows up there, there's a kind of a giraffe bendy toy doing the twist in the background, and I animated that.
I see more animation in your future.
I think the thing that's most frustrating about doing these audio commentaries is that we only have like an hour and a half to tell 4 years worth of stories. I think we could do 100 of these discs and fill them up with just all the crazy stuff that happened and all the inspiration for what became Toy Story 3.
Some of our favorite part of these credits, which are a long time, I think, since Toy Story, we like to give credits to the babies that were born during the making of the film from the whole company.
It's just a little, again, indication of how much time it takes to make one of these films, that so many babies were born over the course of it. And all of us who've had kids, we can name the movies that our kids were born during. My kids often like to pop in the DVDs and find their names in the production baby credits.
And then we quickly put them to work. Also, it's important to keep the staff growing.
Anyway, signing off, this is Lee Unkrich, the director of the film.
And Darla Anderson, the producer of the film.
And we hope you enjoyed Toy Story 3 as much as we enjoyed making it.
The end.